Hey up lads and lasses, Damphyre here, back again with some more Infinite Lagrange. Carrying on with the tier maker stuff, and we are on to Battlecruisers. We got carriers after this, and I believe that's all the tier list's done. Oh, we got auxiliary, but there's only 2 ships. Yeah, not sure how to do that one. Ediacaran's the better ship. They both serve a very semi-different purpose, really. Well, they kind of sound the both, but anyway, Battlecruisers, that's what you're here for. So, I actually came into this video not expecting to move anything, but apparently, yeah, I'm moving stuff around. So I've added the Thunderbolt in, as you can see in the bottom left. Currently in S tier, CTG, A tier, Spear, and Eternal Storm, and the lowly ST59 is in B tier. So how does this actually look now? The big changes that really are affecting the Battlecruisers is the entire change of the Jaegers and Predators and that kind of strategy where it's attack carriers is now attack super capitals. That's Battlecruisers, carriers, and auxiliary count as super capitals. So we are sat in a position where we're like, well, that kind of means you want something where we can actually put a tank out in front now, which means the highest HP or the highest defensive capable Battlecruisers will tank for your carriers if they're, you know, mid row, front row, etc. So that's actually kind of useful, and it actually puts Battlecruisers in good position. And as I've said in videos previously, since the healing change and stuff like that, they can receive a hell of a lot of healing, and it's actually changed the meta slightly. It's still a swarm-based meta, but instead of going the Frigg Destroyer with your Predator and Jaeger carriers, and then obviously you reinforce with your Solar Whales, your CV3Ks, your Marshals, whatever you got there, we are seeing the higher or the more veteran players that have a lot of tech points, or obviously the whales that have a lot of tech points, start running these extremely heavy fleets. And we're talking like Battlecruisers, carriers being the main body of the fleet. Carriers probably on the reinforce for 5 carriers. The main body is the Battlecruisers, and usually some kind of support, healing, and that kind of thing, which is actually kind of terrifying because newer players, well, they're just not going to be able to crack some of these ships. I mean, my ST59 by themselves against a server 1, server 2 player, I think they could solo their entire fleet. And I don't have, I've got a V2 Battlecruiser, yeah, but it's not V3, it's not maxed out. And it's the ST59. It's not the Spear or the CTG or the Eternal Storm. So it's a little bit worrying that there isn't really much of a counter at the moment to the whales, because other than the fact if you've got similar sized fleets, or if you've got enough coordination within your organization that you can swamp them. Yeah, you just need to watch out for them. If you know there's whales in the enemy union that you're fighting against, just run away. Honestly, this is currently the best situation if you don't have the capability to take on the fleet yourself, or you haven't got allied support at that time. So, with that being said, Constantine the Great, its damage output got nerfed since I last did this video, I believe. Pretty certain I was still talking about the CTG doing 120-ish thousand DPM. It doesn't hit that high anymore. So, it hasn't got any defensive utility modules bar the healing itself. So, I'm going to actually move it down to A tier. So, yeah. I just don't think it is what it used to be, and it used to be this really huge damage, and then the meta shifted into that swarm style meta. Battlecruisers dropped out. It's more about how many carriers and stuff you can hold now, and how many aircraft you can get out. So the healing and the healing buff is quite nice. It's going to get a nice bit of buff. It still hits a decent armor level, and it can potentially heal itself. It has its own like healing UAV system, but it's not UAVs because it doesn't heal anything except itself, which in itself is nice, but it's it's not as good as Spear. Spear is S tier. It's got fantastic damage application. Can't speak today, apparently. And on top of that, we're also seeing, heavy armor. It has a module for heavy armor, which can boost its healing potential up and obviously reduce the amount of damage it's receiving in the first place. It's kind of counterintuitive that they've increased the healing because of armor when armor's like reducing the damage taken anyway. So it's like a compounding effect on how much healing you're getting here from tank-type style ships. And the Spear is the epitome, isn't it, of the tank healing ship. It can bring in healing UAVs of its own. It has ridiculous armor. It's got fantastic damage output if you get the right M1, M2, M3 slots and the right combination of slots. It's just absurd, honestly. Like, Spear at the moment is one of the most dangerous ships in the game if it is supported correctly. Eternal Storm. So I ran Eternal Storm all of last server, and albeit it was very good in what I wanted it to use it for, and it was to try and, in a tank style fleet with its, good energy resistances and all of that, it has still got a lack of damage output compared to the CTG. And that tank roll, it works differently to just boosting the armor. It's like a percentage damage reduction, so you're not getting the effect of the healing increase. Bar just the healing buff itself. So you don't end up with like, an ST-59 with 700 armor. It's got like 500% healing capacity or whatever crazy number it goes up to. It doesn't get that because it's not an armor like increase that it's getting. It's just a damage reduction. So unfortunately, it sort of suffered a little bit, if anything, in the last patch. And again, with the lower damage to the CTG, I'm actually going to move it down to B tier, which is unfortunate because it is a cool looking ship as well. It is one of my more favourite looking ships. The only thing I don't like about it is the weird little bridge that looks absolutely and utterly tiny on it for some reason. But yeah. Oh, the conning tower. And then we get to the ST-59. Massive healing buff. You put heavy armor on this thing, you are capping out the healing buff completely. At 28 CP, it's probably the most cost-efficient tank in the Battlecruiser class. Okay, it's not bringing its own healing, but the other benefit is you could also bring 4 fighters in on this thing. So you can run these, the 28 CP, you can run all 6 in one fleet with enough support ships to keep it healed up, plus the bringing in, 4 times 6, and brain's just completely dried. It's a number. It's a 24. 24. Sounds about right. Probably wrong. And there's 24 aircraft, and it's in the battle, and all you're giving up for it is some, albeit okay-ish, torpedo system. So the ST-59 for me is actually going to be moving up, and it's going ahead of the CTG. I think due to the versatility plus the speed change on it, that's also very notable. The 450 movement speed change brings this in line with the slower cruisers, your Jaegers and Predators and that kind of thing. All will be moving the ST-59 pace. So you've got I think it hits about 650 with upgrades. So you're getting a 650 movement fleet, which is pretty reasonable. Huge amounts of tank. Like 700 armor is nothing to laugh at in itself, and you would probably try and run that armor over the energy resistances. I know that a lot of the damage we get incoming is energy based. Vetus B, T-800s when the aircraft are finished off. Ruby Ion, Reliat, Energy Torp. There is a lot of energy damage potential that's on, within fleets nowadays. So giving up the EM armor for the heavy armor seems a bit counterintuitive, but the increase in healing kind of makes up for the energy loss in the first place. And it just works. It really does. And like I said, it's 28 CP. And they rebuild faster than all the other battlecruisers. Honestly, try the ST-59 out. Heavy armor on it, hangar on it, railguns, all the energy turrets work really well. I prefer the energy turrets at the current moment, but that's... And then the M1 is probably not the best spec. You probably want M2 or M3, and I can't remember the name of them. One's the barrage torpedo one, that's frigate destroyer counter sort of, and the other one's the siege torp one, and that's just counter cruiser and stuff. And I think you'll probably find the torp one to do a little bit better at the current moment. So ST-59 moving up, top of A rank. I definitely think it should be there. It's just 28, like I said, 28 CP, cheap to build, fast to build, fantastic tank. The healing potential on it's incredible. It's bringing in an aircraft. It's doing everything you kind of need it to do, or something to do, and it just fills a role that no other battlecruiser can really fill, because it can also carry... Well, the Spear has corvette carrying capabilities, but I think you give up the UAVs for that, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, ST-59. Probably the second best tank after the Spear, and potentially the most cost-effective tank out of the pair of them, but, you know, the Spear's bringing in damage and all sorts of stuff as well as. Then we have the Thunderbolt. Now, I'm really not sure where to put this. I haven't personally been able to test it. I've had loads of battle reports of it. I've had, you know, multiple people talking to me about it. And there's a recurring theme that is pretty much permanently being told to me. And it is, the damage is incredible, but they die really damn fast. And there's some guys, they've got, you know, some of the modules for it. There's no utility survival module for it. It's all damage, all damage, all damage, all the time. And that is fantastic, and it hits an absurd DPM. I've seen one of the Asian guys has one of these maxed out already, and it's like 130,000 DPM. It's absurd, the DPM this thing gets up to. And, you know, you've also got the ability that when enemies are flanking you, you're now dealing damage to them, and it's like free damage. It doesn't drop your damage on the main fleet. It increases, you just get an extra 40% damage come from bloody nowhere. So it's really difficult to position. It's in the same category as the CTG, where it's got a lower end of the tank. It's got more damage than the CTG, so I believe it should be above it. But I think it might be squishier than even the CTG, and that might be pretty detrimental. I think if you use this in a correct fleet setup where maybe it's not been tested yet, you're running maybe ST-59 in front of it, you reinforce with Thunderbolt. So you got your ST-59, your swarm of healers, your Thunderbolt reinforces, and you just sit there and try and take as much damage while dealing as much damage as potential out. That's maybe where you use the Thunderbolt. And then you keep your Spear and some other healers back for your main fleet with your carrier reinforce. I think that's probably what you're going to be trying to do with it, from all the battle reports I said, because the damage is, like, I've not seen this much damage on even the CTG in its heyday. Doesn't do what the Thunderbolt can do. And, but yeah, very, 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 very squishy. So, with a heavier tank meta, I'm going to keep the tanks out front in S and the top of A tier with Spear and the SD59. We then have our top damage dealers in the terms of the Thunderbolt and CTG. I put the Thunderbolt here ahead of the CTG, but to be honest, they're probably about the same just due to how squidgy the Thunderbolt really is. And then the poor Eternal Storm, I am moving down to B. I was, unfortunately, quite a bit disappointed with its performance. Its tank was okay, and that was running the magic armor that just reduces percentage of physical damage coming in and energy and the rest. And I've got a lot of modules on it as well. You know, I'm running D3 and B2, and I think I was running M2. I was running the plasma. I tried both actually. I run M1 for a bit and then I switched to M2. M2 was definitely the better way to go. And yeah, the damage output was good, but only if you're shooting at spears, basically. It really struggled to do massive amounts of damage to cruisers. For example, I did a fleet, and it was just a test fleet. I had my 8 IO high speeds in there, that's the Type B, and I had 5 Eternal Storms reinforcing it, and my IOs outdamaged the Eternal Storms for lowest CP against cruiser targets. And you're kind of at that point going, yeah, it's not quite right. However, when the Eternal Storm found a Battlecruiser target, it ripped it apart. It was fantastic in that role, but not for the CP cost at the end of the day. Not for that tank. And there's too much wrong with it. So that is the Battlecruisers. I probably made this video far too long by rambling on way too much, but there you go. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.